Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Tomer Klein, host of the Blue Collar Jew, out here fighting this world of lies and questioning the narratives. Today on the show, I have the one and only Rafi Farber, somebody that I really enjoy watching and getting his take on world events. He is you're more along the line specialized in gold, silver, hard assets during times of uncertainty, and we have seen these rises and jumps in gold and silver prices in recent times. And yeah, welcome to the show, Rafi.
Thanks for having me.
So where are you at right now? You are still in Israel, correct?
Yes, I'm still here. I plan to remain here. I'm in the Golan. So
Mhm.
that's in northern Israel, which some people think is like the main war zone, but it's not really. Nothing really happens here. We haven't had any missiles in the city during this round. I had a few in 2024. One hit my block and put some holes in my car and my bedroom window, but since then, nothing. And it's pretty calm here because we're on the Syrian side of the border. There's Lebanon on the west side, and then Syria on the east side. So
Okay.
since Syria is it's not really even a functioning country. Well, neither is Lebanon, but that's a different story. At least Lebanon has an organized group called Hezbollah that pretty much runs things. Syria doesn't anymore because Assad was kicked out, and they have pretty much no government. And after the coup there, how long ago it was? It was like a year and a half ago or something like that. Israel just went in and bombed all of their remaining military infrastructure, so they pose no threat to us anymore, and they can't really shoot anything. So it's pretty calm here. It's not the same in the Americas in the center of the country where a lot of the missiles are aimed at, but there's nothing. There've been no real major hits of serious infrastructure. There's a few hits in Haifa maybe, but there's no gasoline shortage or anything like that. And if you notice, we can't really trust the news on anything. I can't trust the news here. You can't trust the news there. I can trust, I can barely trust what I see with my eyes, but I think we can trust market prices. And according to the market, the shekel is at all-time highs against the dollar. That doesn't mean that the shekel is a good currency. There are no good currencies. But if the shekel's at an all-time high against the dollar and near all-time highs against the euro and all-time highs against the yen, it seems that the market would be saying that Israel is winning, whatever that means. I don't know. But if Israel was being seriously damaged, the shekel wouldn't be at all-time highs. Just wouldn't.
Why would the shekel be at all-time highs? It doesn't make sense because it goes against logic when you see, like you said, we can't really trust 100% what we see on the news or any percentage points sometimes. But when we're having these bombings and all this economic uncertainty, how is it that the Israeli shekel is doing so good? Is it just because of pure speculation?
Well, this isn't my area of expertise, but I can speculate.
Hmm.
Um, what I would say is that Israel has demonstrated that it is the regional power in the neighborhood. And it seems that the Gulf neighbors who Jews don't really understand this, and I don't understand it either, but apparently it's true. The Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims, I don't even really understand the differences between them. It's something about the succession of Muhammad, and they disagreed on who's succeeding him or something like that. And 90% are Sunni and 10% are Shia. And Iran is like the main center for Shia Islam in the world, and they hate each other almost as much as they hate Jews. Not quite as much, but like pretty close.
Yeah.
So if the Jews are showing that they are the most powerful country in the region, which it seems that we are, both economically, and I'm not like rah-rahing Israel's economy. It could be so much better, and it's run by a bunch of mafiosos and communist idiots, but
Yeah.
still we can produce a lot more than they can, and create a lot more economic relationships than they can. And if we are the regional power, then the Gulf neighbors who hate Iran will partner up with us on oil deals and energy deals and to cut Iran out once they see that we're controlling the situation. We're not in full control yet, but it seems that the market is assuming that we will become that way. Um, I mean,
Kind of
that's
almost like
that's
a enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation.
Yeah, I guess. I don't have a problem with economic cooperation with any country, even with Iran. Economic
Yeah,
deals are fine. I do have a problem with political deals, like we'll trade with you if you uh, retreat from this area or give this area to Arabs or something like that. That I would be totally against. But any economic deal with anybody, it's fine. Trade.
yeah,
I'm for free trade with enemies too. That there's no
yeah.
problem with that. Just no political deals, no peace treaties, nothing like that. I don't want any of that.
Because we've all seen like the peace deals, and a lot of people are saying with air quotes rising anti-Semitism for Jews to make Aliyah and things like that. Um, they'll do these peace deals where like the Arabs will get a bunch of land, like they got the Sinai Desert, they've pulled out of Lebanon before, and then you just see Hezbollah built itself back up, and now we're facing the situation that we're facing in again. And since this incursion started, what, a week or two ago, this is like the third or fourth time in the last 2 years, basically since 2024, where they go in, we lose a bunch of our boys, we pull out part of some like ceasefire agreement or something ridiculous. And it's just this back and forth where it's kind of like a Vietnam style, and it's just wasted blood, wasted, youth for nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a disgusting situation. And people ask me, they say, like, why can't Israel be at peace with its neighbors? Why can't we just stop the fighting? Why do we always have to be at war? Well, my blunt answer is because nobody lets the war finish. Nobody lets one
Yes.
side win and another side lose. And when one side loses, that means they lose for good. Like
Yeah.
in World War II, like they lose because they cannot fight anymore. And then once you
Yeah.
have that, then you have surrender, and then the war can end. If people or bigger players are constantly, holding one side back and not letting them finish the fight, then there's going to be another round, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no deal. So it just if, for example, instead of going into Lebanon, invading it every time Hezbollah throws a rocket at Kiryat Shmona, which is all the time, that's why Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. It's not like we're doing it for fun. It's not fun. We don't like doing that. It gets our people killed, and what's the point? Well, the reason we were doing it is because the Lebanese or whoever they were, I don't think they were called Hezbollah back then, maybe they were, but same people, they were bombing our northern cities. So we invaded Beirut. Okay. I mean, what else are you going to
Mhm.
do? Just let them bomb it? Like, what can we
Yeah.
do?
The hypocrisy I'm noticing with people I went to high school with, because I went to public school. My mother's Jewish, my father's not Jewish. I grew up like very secular, very
Mm.
like assimilated in like New York, in New York State. And yeah, a lot of people, they make comments like automatically they assume that I support anything and everything that are going on in the United, like with what's going on with the war. And I actually say exactly what you were just saying, that the more you prolong these events, you technically more people end up dying. If they didn't do what they did in Japan, they were estimating that they could lose up to like 400,000 US troops trying to take mainland Japan if they didn't just nuke the place. And they had to do it twice. And I feel like, is this what's going to end up happening in Iran? Because you're kind of seeing the same fundamentalism and like diehardness. Is it going to get to that point, or
No,
what's going to happen?
I pray not. I no, I don't want nuclear weapons to be involved in anything, obviously.
Yeah.
And I don't buy that argument that the U.S. had to nuke Japan in order to save American lives. I've heard it before,
Hmm.
but as a student of libertarian leaning history narratives or historical narratives, especially Ralph Rako talks about this. America didn't have to conquer Japan. It didn't have to do that. They could have just stopped fighting at all. And then Japan would have just been on its side of the world and they'd been punished enough for bombing Pearl Harbor, which they were kind of, baited into. Whatever. I don't get into a historical discussion, but I
No,
don't want to
you're
be
good. You're
I
good.
don't want to be considered, defending the nuking of cities. I can't take
I'm with
that
you.
position. Um, but
More along the lines
yeah.
because of like it's the difference between that and let's say like a Dresden. You know what I mean? Dresden, they just took out all their economic superpower, and you just kind of bleed them dry that way instead of killing off, hundreds of
Yeah,
thousands
but
of people.
Israel doesn't have to do anything like that. We don't have to carpet bomb entire cities and kill hundreds of thousands of innocent people, like like
Yeah,
the Americans did in World War II, and not just the Americans did in World War II. Every country does that in every war. That's what war
yeah.
is. But all of a sudden, when we fight war, we're like, oh, it's collateral damage. Yeah, there's always collateral. That's what war is,
Always,
okay?
yeah,
That's just what it is.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's very, very simply what Israel could do is just, well, you invade Lebanon, well, you push everyone out that's in your area that you invaded, and you take it and you add it to your country. And then you say, well,
absolutely.
if you shoot another rocket, we'll take another mile, and then we'll make the border another
Yeah,
mile north. And you shoot another one, we'll take another mile because we could do that easily, very easily. But we don't,
easily.
and it just keeps going and going and going. It's not going to end until we take the land.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's almost like I think I say to some people, the best weapon we have is school buses. When people, let's say like a terrorist commits an event, you just deport the whole family. You execute the terrorist, you deport the whole family to Jordan. We now control the Syria border in and out. Like you said, it's a lawless land. Put them there if they decide to, commit acts of terror. Put them there. They shoot rockets at us again. We take more territory. You go in 10 more miles and create a new buffer zone and repopulate the area. There's like nothing new throughout human history. And this would
Yeah.
almost like for sure secure the future of the country.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk like that, Americans will be, oh, whoa, that's Jewish supremacy or greater Israel and all this stuff. I mean, what is manifest destiny? What is 54-40 or fight? Sea to shining sea. You have
Yeah,
these people that conquered entire continents, and they're saying, oh, well, you can't take 5 feet of Lebanon. That's immoral. Okay, I
yeah,
can't really take you seriously. It's like, but
yeah,
I expect people to say that to Jews because. Uh, but that's it's a complicated question on why, but the West's religious identity comes from the Jews, whether they like it or
yeah.
not. I mean, their New Testament is based on the Old Testament. They're not their
Hmm.
own separate religion. They are a derivative of Judaism.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Even all the early
they
Christians
don't
were
like
Jews.
that. They don't like that because Christianity is built on supersessionism that the Christians superseded the Jews and they became the real Israel, and now, oh, we're back in Israel. So what does that mean religiously? So either you're like the Tucker Carlson kind of Christian that says, well, Israel's illegitimate, it's an evil state and it should go away, which is what he hints at all the time, more vociferously lately. Or you can become a Christian Zionist and say, "Oh, the real plan was that the Jews would come back, and then once they did, Jesus would arrive. So we have to help the Jews until Jesus arrives, and then we'll convert them all." So like both those sides are wrong, but I'm glad to team up with the Christian Zionists now because, you know,
Yeah, at
it.
least it's not like old Europe where they're trying to like slaughter us. Like, I heard stories from my great grandparents, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So during this time, I heard some of your interviews where you were talking about like economic hard times in some of these towns that are more affected up there in the north, and you said you see it with some of your neighbors. What has like precious metals done to help you through these times? Has it worked as against the hedge against inflation, where you're able to get more purchasing power, or what have you seen the benefits of it in
Well,
uncertainty like now?
I've been stacking metals since 2012. That was my first
Okay.
silver purchase. Um, and I haven't spent any of them. I still I have some of my metals with Keith Weiner earning interest in gold and silver terms, excuse me, and I have a very small amount with me for emergencies. I mean, basically, uh, it, if you understand that metals are money, if you understand what a derivative is, that the purchasing power of the dollar comes from its origin as a gold derivative, and therefore it still is that, because all the inflation, all the other stuff is on top of the gold layer. It's not in place of it, it's on top of it. So you have gold and you have all this inflated debt on top of that. But when that goes away, like if the debt goes away because people can't pay it, the gold is still there, and so is all this stuff that's available for purchase. So then what happens is the debt can't buy anything, and the paper is mostly debt, and it's a little bit of gold, but gold is all gold and no debt. So all of the purchasing, knowing that all the purchasing power at the collapse of a currency will flow necessarily into gold and by extension silver because silver and gold are related, even though the dollar is not a silver derivative anymore. It used to be. So just knowing that keeps me calmer, knowing that I don't have to wake up in the morning and all my shekel in my shekel account will be worth nothing, which is what's going to happen here. It doesn't matter how strong the shekel is because the shekel is just basically the dollar, because the shekel is issued by a bank called the Bank of Israel. And what does the Bank of Israel own? Dollars. Okay,
Dollars. Yeah.
that's the transitive property. A equals B, B equals C. Okay, that it's simple.
Hmm.
There's nothing complicated about that. It's just like people are like, oh, you can't say the shekel is the dollar because the shekel is based on the Israeli economy. No, it's the shekel is not based on the Israeli economy. No currency is based on its economy. That doesn't make any sense. The If that were true, hyperinflation would never happen because in every hyperinflationary economy, if there's still an economy, there's still stuff in there. It's just the currency's dead. But how is that possible if the currency is the economy? It's not the economy. A currency is a derivative either of another currency, which is a derivative of gold, or it's a derivative of gold itself. So when a currency collapses, all the purchasing power goes into gold. That's what happened here in 1985. That's what's going to happen here again. And knowing that, and also knowing that during the war itself, it's not necessarily true that gold is going to go up during the war, as we see. Like, when the Iran war started, gold went down. Why? Because in the immediate fog of the whole thing, you need the most convenient liquidity that exists. And right now, that's not gold, that's the dollar. Right? Until the debt completely collapses, that's going to be the case. In the years leading up to the hyperinflation in Weimar, gold was very volatile, especially 1922, early 1923, until November 1923 when it went to infinity or a trillion or whatever it was. But you have to understand what gold is, that it is money, and that as the debt is dying, the value of it's going to go pretty crazy. But as someone who bought gold like a long time ago, the volatility doesn't matter to me anymore. In 2020, it did, right?
Hmm.
I was underwater, and there was a huge liquidity crunch, and I lost my job because of or me like right before COVID, and everyone was losing their jobs because of the lockdown. So I had to figure out what to do quickly. So that was really scary. But now it's like, okay, well, gold goes up from 5,600, goes down to 4,700. I'm like, who cares? Like, I bought it at like 1,200. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
exactly. Yeah. I think my last big purchases, I was at like 2,500. I picked up a few ounces here and there.
Mm,
And then, it got up to like 5,600, but I'm still sitting on coins that I picked up at like 975 back in 2008-ish when everything
mm,
started tanking. And then I had some coins. I had three of them. I sold two of them back in that time frame when it hit like $1,100. But I had some my grandfather told me to buy when I was in high school working, and I bought them at like 635 and 685 somewhere in there. And all you've ever seen it do is just go like this and kind of just be that hedge. I think maybe one day I'm looking forward to where like some gold coins can buy me a couple blocks in New York City when it all tanks like
well,
it did back in.
yeah, that's kind of my plan. I'm stacking not to necessarily protect my family, though. Yes, I want to protect my family. I'm stacking because I know that on the day that the dollar collapses, the shekel collapses too. Because like if the dollar can't buy anything, then it doesn't matter if the shekel is worth $2 or sorry, if 3 shekels is worth a dollar or 4 shekels is worth a dollar, it doesn't make a difference if the dollar is worthless, right? It's all
Yeah.
so the reason that I stack gold is because I want the most liquidity when my people need that liquidity to keep their division of labor alive. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the best I can to help out, and saving my family is just a side effect of that. But I wanna purchase a lot of capital because I want to be able to uh, just like the Hive deal. Like, I'm not comparing myself to Elon Musk. I'm not, but he's able to exert so much influence because he can buy Twitter for $45 billion and keep whatever's remaining of free speech alive. He's able to instill whatever good values he has in a society and save a lot of the world, frankly. I don't know how long it's going to last, but he did some important stuff. especially with buying, mostly with buying Twitter, and keeping that alive.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we'd still be like in a COVID hellscape where the vaccine saved everybody, and lockdowns saved so many lives, saved millions of lives according to the models, and because you wouldn't be able to say anything else on Twitter, and like everybody else would be censored. But my point is that I want to be able to influence the world with my values, and the way that I can do that realistically is with a lot of capital when it's desperately needed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of been in the same position for me and my family as well. We just had my son, he's 16, 17 months now. Of course, more children coming. And I'm just
Mazel
looking at it.
tov,
I'm like,
mazel tov.
thank you, thank you. The thing, these are my first kids, so I was a little older when I got married, but I was just working, building a business, doing all that stuff, and then you think, okay, well, what are you doing these things for? And I think especially once you start having kids, you start seeing down the line. And I think about what my grandfather taught me. He said, you got to learn a trade, you got to learn a skill, you have to learn something that's marketable. And I do heating and air conditioning on a commercial industrial basis. And my grandfather did that. He was pipe fitter, electrical. His father did that. I mean, it goes down the line that they were boiler makers going back to the early 1800s, and they always had a skill set. No matter what the economy was like, they always had gold, silver. They always had something that they could print money. Like my business basically prints fiat currency. It's great. I love it. And it's
Yeah.
just that's like my hedge against that inflation. I remember pre-COVID, we were paying, let's say I would get like a train 5-ton package unit. I would pay $3,100. Now I'm pushing 6 grand, for that same thing. But my margins are still the same. My insurances go, I mean, everything's just relative, and that's kind of what I've been also doing to offset all this fiat currency collapse that I think we're in the middle of since then. So, I mean, here we are. Fast forward. I can't believe COVID. It feels like it was just yesterday. I remember being in San Francisco in December of 2019, and they had pallets of masks, and they said limit 2 per customer, and I'm like, what are we talking about? Because we needed them when we would go into the attics, and they
Mhm.
started shipping them out to China because in San Francisco there's a lot of Chinese, and they were charging like $60 a mask, and I didn't quite understand what was going on, and then it hit like a freight train. COVID, and then it goes into, like you said, all these lockdown measures. You couldn't say anything. I got notifications on all my social media whenever I would make a post, kind of questioning the narrative. And that's what I tend to do in the show, is question these narratives and then fast track to where, like you said, Elon Musk, he basically saved free speech in many ways in America, you know,
Yeah.
because now all these people, you had that guy from Pfizer who he just got caught by Project Veritas, and he was basically saying all the things that everybody was questioning, and there's like no accountability for these people to just continue
Oh, you mean
to
that Jordan, what's his name? Jordan Walker,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Like the things he said, I'm like, you would get like, I mean, people would ostracize you for questioning like those narratives that were going
Yeah.
on at that time. So yeah, and I remember what you were saying. I mean, you said this before, like you wouldn't wear the mask, you wouldn't comply, and you had to like record yourself to protect yourself from once these people were nuts, especially
Yeah.
in Israel. They were
Yeah.
just like drinking the Kool-Aid. It was insane. So yeah. So yeah,
I mean,
that's
I see October 7th, what happened to us on Shmini Atzeret in 2023,
mhm,
as partly a punishment for our behavior during COVID. I'm not sa- I'm not
100%.
I'm not saying that God. You have to understand how I think about reward and punishment. It's not necessarily as we think of it, like there's a guy in the sky and he has a beard and he got angry when we did something regarding COVID, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to punish you by killing all these innocent people." That's not how punishment works. But when with the Jews, there is a deal with God, like with meaning with the creator of the universe, with the way the universe functions. We are plugged into it in a certain way that other nations are not, which is why we end up at the center of things, whether we want to or not. And believe me, most of the time we don't want to, but we keep
Yeah.
ending up here, and there's nothing we can do about it. And so, programmed into the fabric of moralistic space-time, I guess you could say, is that if we act in a certain way, the world will react in a certain way, and sometimes that means massacring us.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the situation. We're at the singularity of all of Western society, which drags in with it China and all the rest of the East because of the trade relations, and we're right at the center of it. It's because of us that Hormuz is
Hmm.
blocked, and people blame the Jews for it. And I'm so yeah, it's our fault. Well, because we're always at the center of things, and we can't move from here. So,
Yeah.
what are we gonna
Yeah. Yeah.
do?
Yeah. I mean, geographically, we're at the center. Politically, it seems like we're at the center. Definitely spiritually, we're at the center, and there's no way of escaping it. I mean, you look at
Yeah.
every important world leader, he always seems to have a Jewish guy by their side. Obama had Rahm Emanuel. Trump has Kushner.
Well,
They had David Axelrod.
Pharaoh had Joseph, Achashverosh,
Yep.
Xerxes had Mordecai.
Hmm.
Nebuchadnezzar had Daniel. It's the same story over and over again. It's
Yeah.
there's nothing we can't escape this.
Yeah. And there's times too where I'm just like, I just want to go live out at my bug out ranch and just be left alone, sell my company, and just go play cattle rancher for the rest of my life. But Hashem has different plans, apparently. I don't
Yeah,
have a choice in the matter. But yeah,
and
so what do you think is going to happen then in the current, like, how do you think this thing's going to play out? Do you see like a collapse of Israel happening? You've mentioned before, you've talked about like you're kind of seeing the flailing ends of an empire either dying or a rebirth. What happens to like satellite countries? Part of that, like Israel and Europe. I mean, I think Europe is dying on its own because of a different reason,
yeah. Well,
different from
Europe is
Israel.
committing suicide.
Yeah.
That's the. I mean, culturally, they seem to be doing it on purpose, and I think a lot of that is because they've lost any connection with God. And the
Yeah.
Christians, I mean, I'm not a fan of Christianity, as you well know, but it at least does connect the goyim with God in some way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
for them, that's important. And it connects them to God through us, because again, Christianity is a derivative. And Europe got rid of that, and they just stopped caring. And then that they lost their cultural identity, they lost their will to culturally continue. It's like it's a reflection of the loss of the will of an individual man to procreate anymore. They don't want to have
Hmm.
kids because they don't want to risk a relationship with a woman because they don't know who she truly is, and nobody wants to have a family anymore. That's suicide. It's suicide because I mean you live your life and then you're dead and then that's it. If you
Yeah.
don't, so
It's
what's
pretty
happening?
self-centered,
Yeah. Yeah, and then you lose your mind because you're always focused on yourself, and then that drives you crazy, very
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so
My
what?
rabbi, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I know you were asking. I'll just answer quickly and then go on with your point.
Yeah.
What happens with the satellite countries? I think we have to understand that the entire economic system is based on the dollar as the main gold derivative, and gold is the money. So when that breaks down, the entire global division of labor breaks down, and then you're going to have local communities are going to have to start working together or die, and
Yeah.
a lot of local communities will work together. But the closer that your local community is with itself, the better you will be. So if you have a community of like-minded people who spiritually centered, like for example, the Amish, right? I mean, let's put their lack of weapons aside. Let's assume they're armed, and they're very cohesive because they have a shared vision and a shared value system, and they have a lot of skills. So any community that has that will survive. And as much as dysfunctional as the Jews are, when it comes to we have to work together or die, we're going to work together because that's what we always do. Israel was the most functional as a state, as a country, in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. Everybody started working and helping, and the government just kind of bowed out and said, "Okay, just do what you want. We won't bother you for a few months." And nobody had to pay any taxes because the tax authorities didn't want to bother us, while we're while we're repairing the huge wound that Hamas inflicted on us. So we can function very well together when we have to, and we can also fight pretty disgustingly when we don't have when we don't have to. But the reason I'm here and not where you are is that I'm sure Israel will survive the collapse of the dollar. I'm not so sure that America will, and I think it will be much more dangerous to be there than here.
I think so. Because the thing is like a lot of Jews who, and I'm kind of now one of them, I had a bad taste in my mouth after COVID and then the reaction to October 7th, by flipping up the goals and the objectives because they want to play politics with the world. And a lot of Jews, especially a lot of American Jews with money and understand how to build successful businesses and basically establish like a strong economy, and get rid of that old communist bureaucracy that we've picked up from the, basically the Soviet Union. How many of those early Zionists
That
brought
was
that
ourselves
garbage
too.
there?
That Jews are on both sides of it. We're very good businessmen on
Oh
one side,
yeah,
and we're also very destructive on the other side. And we're
yeah,
always fighting each other, and it's always a civil war between us. So
yeah,
that's what a lot of people don't understand that. And you say, "Oh, Jews are responsible for this, and Jews are bad because of that." Yeah, we have what's his name, Albert Bourla, the head of Pfizer, the head of the Fed. Alan Greenspan was the most destructive Fed member, Jewish guy. So yeah, Jews are very destructive, but it's not that Jews are especially evil. It's just that we're really good at whatever we do, and if we decide to be evil, we're really good at that too, unfortunately.
yeah. That's a big unfortunate. The other thing too is firearm ownership. The biggest way to get me to move back there is private ownership, Second Amendment. I own a lot of guns. I have like over 50 of them. I've collected
Mhm.
them. That's just like my thing. It's almost performed just as good as my gold, if not equal. But yeah, I mean, like you're in the middle of a hostile environment, and one in five roughly, Israeli passport holders are people who do call for your destruction. And across the north, you're there, and throughout the Galil, there's a lot of Arab towns and villages, and you know that they're obviously, if they had the chance, they would pull off attacks and whatnot. And me not being able to have some of the weaponry that I have is kind of a big, decision, and why we don't move there as well.
Mhm.
Especially, we would live in the Golan. Me and my wife have already decided that we won't live in the center or even Yerushalayim. The culture doesn't mesh with us. And she's Israeli, Sephardi, grew up Haredi, the whole thing. She knows the system, and she
Mhm.
wants nothing to do with it. She's been a little turned off. Like I've been reading the book Perfidy. I don't know if you've ever read it.
Perfidy,
And
yeah.
the Perfidy, yeah.
Yeah,
So
these books about Jewish betrayal of themselves, I know about it. I don't need to read it. I get it. It's
yeah. So we're kind of like we're a little on the fences about that of recent times. I know you interviewed Joshua Wander. Me and him have gone back and forth in the background a few times,
mhm.
but he's just like, you just need to come here. You just need to come here. And then I get there and I'm like, I bring a good skill set. I bring, um, I have electrical and HVAC knowledge and commercial and industrial. And then I find out that there's like government policies on what you can charge. And I'm like, well, that's not a free market system.
Oh yeah, it's
That's like
definitely not. Yeah.
you're not going to attract people with real skills to move there and really build the country. And then they wonder why they have this like labor crunch, and they have to use Arabs who are taking the money to only do what they did to us on October 7th. So to me, it's like a backward system.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it
So
definitely is. We could be doing so much better.
yeah,
As I said in the beginning, I'm not a cheerleader for the Israeli economy, or especially not the shekel. The whole thing is a
yeah,
boondoggle and a theft. But still, we can fit. It's like the government is like broke both of our legs and our arms, and we're busy like crawling on our elbows. But still, we can move.
yeah,
And the if you go into even Israeli Arab towns here, or anywhere in
mhm,
Syria or Lebanon or Jordan or Egypt, and it's all basically just it's just a zoo everywhere. They have they have not it. I
yeah,
don't know how to
yeah,
describe it. It's like there's nothing there. They're just masses of humanity.
yeah, yeah. I used to work in Shechem. I was married before, also to an Israeli, and her father and me, we used to do this printing. So he had like Arab business partners, and we used to work in these like little villages just outside of Shem, and you would see like the Free Palestine spray painted everywhere, guys walking around with Kalashnikovs. We got invited to weddings and stuff like that. And it's like you look at it and there is nothing producing here. Like it's just like this. Nobody really has a job. Everybody's kind of cheating the system. They don't pay taxes on stuff. And here we are, the well, not me because I'm not a citizen there, but we're kind of like the dolts, just like paying into the system, watching the elite just like rip us off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of, it sounds like a mini America in many ways, because you got a large, welfare state in the United States. And if you're at all productive, you're just paying into that and then paying into wars that have like no end, like
Yeah.
no winning strategy. So, but yeah,
Yeah, well, we will and then I guess you could seg into the question of how do we win this? I think the answer is we run out of money and then we do what has to be done.
yeah, yeah,
Uh
yeah. We have no choice.
yeah. It's just like any time when you grow in your life, you make a decision that any big decision in your life, it always feels like you had no choice and you had to do it. But that's how it is with individual people that we grow as humans when we are forced to either grow or die. And those that choose to die, either they die physically or they die just spiritually and they just stop caring about life and they just like go through it like a zombie, which is most people. Or they
Yeah,
they step up and they do something scary that they know they have to do. So it's the same on a national scale. Like when do we win this war? When we either have to win it or we die. That's what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah. And to round it out with one last question, do you think we're living in prophecy, or do you think, like, as I said earlier, do you think the politicians are just using this to like pump their narrative? Do you think we're in the middle of Nevoah right now?
Um, I do, uh, but I'm not the kind of guy that, quotes a Bible verse and says, "Oh, what just happened yesterday is according to Ezekiel 38, blah blah blah." Like I keep it in the background, like as a general narrative of God's promise that Jewish history and through Jewish history, world history will come to some point that makes sense through these general processes. So that's how I can go through these wars and say, well, I don't like this. My kids aren't in school, and I'm being driven insane slowly, more quickly now because, hearing sirens all the time, it's bad for your brain.
Yeah.
Um, so I keep the prophecy in mind, and I say to myself that the promises to the Jewish people are real. We have come back to Israel. That was prophesied and that has happened. And now we are coming back to the Temple Mount. We are starting to pray there again. That was also prophesied and that has happened. Is specifically now the war with Iran, talked about in Ezekiel, and that's why I should cheer it on. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I guess I'll see when everything is done. But I'm still within that general framework of the Jews have returned, and it's if you look at Ezekiel 38, it says that the big war that precedes the Messianic era happens when the Jews are back on their land from being a desolate land before. Now we're back, so that's happened. But I'm not going to therefore cheer on every politician who says we have to fight this way because cheer me or whatever he says. But I'm just one person. I can't affect what the
Yeah.
politicians do about the war. I have to trust that God is really running the show here through his little puppets, his BB puppets,
Mhm.
and whoever what other idiots are running this place, and his will be done. And I want to be here when that happens, however it happens.
Man, oh man. All right. So, Rafi, where can we find you?
Check my Substack Endgame Investor at Substack. Endgameinvestor.substack.com. You can my YouTube channel is just my name, Rafi Farber. And I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/endgameinvestor, where I give once every week or 2 weeks a lesson based in the Bible and some Talmudic sources on economics and government and anything I can find on whatever parish I happen to be doing that year. So it can get interesting, gets fun.
Nice, nice. All right, so yeah, we're going to close out today. And yeah, we'll be seeing you on the next one. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.